Well, is simple and tiny the solution? That is simple and tiny the solution to the housing affordability crisis here in the U.S. and in so many other Western countries? This is one of the kind of topics I find myself thinking about as I'm hunkered down in our RV on a snowy spring day in Wyoming. Those of you who have been following along this channel for any length of time know that I've been living simple and tiny for a long time now. I spent nearly a decade as a nomad, a van lifer, and then as a full-time RVer. Prior to that, I was a hardcore minimalist for a while, even for a time living out of one bag as I traveled around the country. When I wrote a book about minimalism in 2015, it was born from my experiences living simple and tiny. When I wrote another book about car living in 2016, it was also born from my experiences living simple and tiny while traveling around the U.S. in a Toyota Camry. When I wrote yet another book in 2019 about the nomadic lifestyle, it covered some of the lessons that I had learned living simple and tiny as a van life nomad. And so I've been interested in and trying to practice simple and tiny living for a very long time. As I look at news reports and hear stories from viewers about the staggering cost of housing here in the U.S., I wonder where this situation ultimately leads us. According to Zillow, the U.S. typical home value in February 2024 was $349,216, a 4.2% increase year over year. Meanwhile, the U.S. typical rent in February, also according to Zillow, was $1,959, a 3.5% year-over-year increase. Typical home values since pre-pandemic times has been a 40.8% increase. That's just a staggering jump over relatively few short years. And the typical mortgage payment has increased by 9.4% year over year. This all from February 2024. Now you'll find similar numbers from HUD and Census Bureau reports, the National Association of Realtors, and a multitude of other sources. The exact numbers can vary a little bit depending on their survey methodology, but they're always similarly staggering. The bottom line is that there are not enough housing units available for everyone who wants or needs them. They're not being built fast enough, and there just are not enough available. This fact, coupled with other factors like increasing size of homes and amenities, along with tightening building code requirements, results in housing costs continuing to increase faster than wages or incomes. We see this firsthand because in addition to me being a content creator and professional video editor, we also own and operate an inspection business here in Wyoming. And this inspection business keeps us closely in tune with the regional real estate market, both single-family residential and commercial. Housing is in tight supply here in Wyoming, while prices are staggering and continue to climb. Houses that are listed for less than $300,000 in our area tend to sell almost instantly, while houses in the range of $500,000 to $600,000 are becoming increasingly common. Mobile homes, once considered a reliable option for affordable housing, have more than doubled in cost here in Wyoming in the past 5 years. So why share all this gloomy information? It's not to be negative or depressing. It's instead to suggest a possible solution that I've been considering and pondering for some time. We as a society, in my opinion, need to embrace living simply and tiny. The average home in the U.S. now would have been considered a McMansion not so very many years ago. And as housing sizes and amenities grow, so do prices, and much more rapidly than most people's incomes. I only see two outcomes from this trend as it continues. One, our housing inventory becomes smaller and simpler, and thus more affordable. Or two, an ever-growing number of people are priced out of housing. Option one means more housing becoming available, some of it non-traditional, which might include tiny homes, accessory dwelling units, which is becoming a thing in certain states. That is where you put extra houses or extra living units on your property. For example, glorified sheds in the backyard, or converting another part of the home that was not used as a home before to be an accessory dwelling unit, either for rent or for relatives to live in, family members to live in. So could be tiny homes, could be accessory dwelling units, increased residential RV parks to replace closing RV parks and mobile home parks, which has been a trend recently as well, because the land is valuable enough that it ends up being sold off and redeveloped as something more profitable for the landowners. All those things would come together to make a difference in increasing housing inventory while it becomes smaller and simpler at the same time. Option two, means more and more people becoming homeless, or at the very least, houseless, as nomads often like to describe themselves. My prediction, option 2 will continue to prevail for a season. That's my opinion. That is that more and more people will become displaced from traditional housing before anything changes. Because despite all the buzz in the news about the housing affordability crisis and all this, I don't think it's gotten to the point where it's bad enough that politicians and the powers that be are willing to make any changes yet. In the short term, more and more people will probably continue to be displaced from traditional housing due to rising costs driven by high demand. Eventually, option 1 will become more mainstream, in my opinion. The truth is the government likes people corralled into fixed locations where they're easier to monitor and manage, and that's difficult to do when they're scattered to the four winds living on public lands, right? As more and more people become displaced from traditional housing and are living in vehicles and adopting other alternative arrangements because they cannot find or afford housing, I believe government regulations and even incentives will begin to shift in favor of newly legitimized non-traditional housing options that include tiny homes and even RVs at residential RV parks or on private property. This is my take on a current headline news issue that's of interest to me, both personally and professionally. What's your opinion on the growing housing affordability situation, though? What is the solution to housing costs that are already unaffordable for many people and have become increasingly unaffordable each and every year? I think simple and tiny living is the solution. Let me know in the comments what you think.